Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you for this opportunity and welcome to all of the people who are here. Sean wanted to know whether I was going to have a presentation and whether it was, how was this evening going to go? And my invitation is really for us to have a conversation. It would be very boring for you to listen to someone speak at you. But when we converse with each other, then we can do something much more interesting than what I can do on my own. So Jane, you were just there. Your video was on. I was so happy that your video was on and now Jane's video has disappeared as well, because it's so much nicer for me to speak to people rather than just names on a screen. So if anybody is able to switch their videos on, that would be amazing. So a little background to how, or maybe the starting point for this conversation has to be to just create a space to hear some of your voices. And we would love for anybody on the call, if you want to just open your mic, unmute yourself and tell us, why did you decide to join this call? You had lots of other things to do tonight. We heard very quickly from Nubuntu earlier. She's got a child at Sean's school, and she said, I'm not going to miss the call because I heard she's a very engaged parent. So that's Nubuntu. But why did the rest of you decide to join? And if you don't want to speak, then you're going to have to mute yourself. Otherwise, we're going to call in you. So I see Tracy is unmuted. Tracy, would you be willing to tell us, why did you join this call? And anybody else, if you want to speak, just unmute yourself. We'd love to hear your voice. Tracy. No, Tracy's muted herself. Anybody want to tell us, why did you join the call? Philip. Oh, no, sorry, that's not Philip. That is
Tracy. Tracy. There's two Tracys. There's always two Tracys. I joined the call because I work for Sean at her school. So I would love to hear, hey, hello. Tutuko. Sorry, that's my students. Yes, I'm just here to participate and learn some new concepts or whatever you have to offer.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome.
I'm going to try and make a point of remembering that. Then we've got Angelica's unmuted herself, and Jen. We'd love to hear from you as well, Angelica, and from Jen.
Hi, Louise. I think I'm interested in the topic. Well, because Sean all forced us to be here, jokes. But because you take up every opportunity, I think, as a parent to not want to mess up your kid, firstly. So attending these talks becomes important. And something that's very near and dear to my heart is early childhood development and getting those building blocks in place, not only for the privileged, but for the masses in society at large. I think it is an utter disservice sometimes in our country to see the approach of government to early childhood development. A lot of the focus is on school leaving and grade 10, 11, and 12, and only introducing science, technology, and maths, and a focus on that at that stage, to say, but if you miss the foundational years, we've got it completely wrong. So I'm interested in the discourse this evening. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. Jane, and then Ruth Thilds, but we'll go to Jane first.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to join, and thank you, Louise, for the talk we're about to listen to. The topic interested me because I do quite a lot of work in communities in early childhood, both in rural Transkei and also in the townships in and around Cape Town, and trying to bring quality education to all children is my work, my Montessori work. I'm a Montessorian. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you,
so
Jane.
Thank you.
The world needs more Montessori teachers, is what all I want to say. That's if I had a magic wand, I would have more Montessori teachers in the world. Ruth Thilds, is that the right?
Hi. Hi, it's Lydia. My laptop is broken, so I'm using my mom's for everybody who knows me. Yeah, before I started working at Montessori school, I did study social work, and I just know the importance of the involvement of the community. So that is what interested me in this talk.
Thank you. And just give me your name again.
It's Lydia, Lydia.
Lydia. Thank you. We've got this a group of people who are masquerading as other people, so I just need to make a note of that.
Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. And then I'm going to get it right. Kwaile.
Yes, why?
Yes. Tell us why you joined today. And it's lovely to see you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. How's everyone doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah. I'm alive and very
You
healthy.
are. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. You are audible.
So yeah, the, the reason why I decided to join the discussion today is because I am a teacher and I'm teaching a primary school in the deep rurals of Limpopo. And then my dream, and it will come true. Sorry to be so hopeful and so arrogant to say it's going to come true, but I dream of a country whereby children know how to live together in like a well-balanced society from a young age.
Yeah.
I believe children should not be how to live with a diverse group of people when they are doing their first year university. And that's your first time you interact with someone from the cities, especially if you come from the villages. I grew up in the villages, and most of the things when you explain in the classroom about the city life, most of these children do not know about city life. And when you're in a city school teaching about rural life, most of the teachers they will be just speaking about things they've seen online, not something that they really experience. So I'm just trying to bridge that gap. So
That is
yeah, I'm curious to find out more about better learning environments for children.
Thank you so much. There's so much that we can talk about. So I think with that, is there anybody else who want to tell us why they're here? Or otherwise, we'll just start the conversation. But I really want to encourage you at any point, if you want to say something or just participate or just unmute yourself, put your hand up, whatever way, get my attention, and then just contribute to the conversation, because I really do not want this to be a one-way thing. As I said, it's very boring. So a little bit of background as to how I got involved in the entire education spectrum is that, where shall I pick this up? So my background is leadership development and organizational development. And we returned to South Africa after living in the UK. And I wanted to do something that's more impactful than just continue to work with large corporate clients and earn, good money. It felt like that was fine when we were living in the UK, but it wasn't fine in South Africa because of the inequality, because of all of the challenges that we have as a nation. So I started to search but what can I do? Because I'm not an educator. So I didn't want to even think that I could get into education as an educator, but I knew that I could contribute. My clients was a very diverse client base in retail and, every kind of industry that you could think about. And my assumption was that because I worked in all of these different industries in leadership, surely there's something I can do in another area that will make a big contribution to the country. And then I always wonder what, I'm kind of interested to hear myself talk, because then I find out where I'm starting the conversation. So in this case, my real pull happened on the 5th of May, 2009, when in South Africa, a set of scenarios were published. It was called the Dinner King scenarios. And it said that South Africa has 3 possible futures. It can either continue to do what it does at the moment, which is walk apart. Everybody does their own thing. Business, government, civil society, everybody do their own thing. And we're not working together. That's a possible future, and the outcome will be dire for our country. There was another possible future, which is walk behind, where government becomes very strong, civil society and citizens and business just follow government's lead. That wasn't really going to happen because our government has not been strong for the last 20 years. And so the third alternative was this amazing idea, which kind of speaks to Kwale's dream, which is called the walk together scenario. And the idea was they were kind of putting this as a provocative proposition, like, imagine what could happen if South Africans decided to walk together, to work together across traditional boundaries of sectors and race and gender and language and culture and all of these things. Imagine what might happen. So I made a commitment on the 5th of May 2009. I said, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to make walk together work. That's going to be the next at least 10 years of my professional life. It's turned out to be a lot longer than 10 years, but it did become a really important piece. And with that, and then I started to think about, wonder where will we start? And I initially had this very audacious idea that we'll work simultaneously in poverty alleviation and in job creation and all of these different things, until I met a guy called Brian O'Connell. He was at the time the Vice Chancellor at University of the Western Cape. And he was an amazing thinker. And he helped me see that day, and since then many of us see, that if we don't fix our education crisis, none of these other things will be resolved. And over the years, to kind of just confirm what Jen said, and I think someone else said as well, over the years, what I've learned since May 2009 is it starts in the womb. It doesn't start, kids, it doesn't start when kids are 6 and 7 or when they go to primary school or in high school. We really have to find a different way of preparing our children for success before they are born. And that's been the big, one of the big lessons that I learned in really immersing myself in this world, is how, if you talk to an educator, most educators in South Africa, if you talk to anybody in the Department of Basic Education and you say to them, what's most important to ensure that our children will succeed in world, they will tell you about grade 8, 9, and 10. Or 10, 11, 12. Because that's where the focus is, that's what gets measured, that's what we see people, get acknowledged for. But I think everybody on this call, and especially the Montessori teachers, know that it starts with our children arriving into the world, having received the necessary nutrition, and a mother who was looked after herself so that the child does not arrive into the world traumatized. The next, and I think I was oblivious because I lived in a bubble of privilege, and in my world it was just a given that mothers will be looked after, and that their children will be healthy, and that they won't be drinking, and that they will be that the child will benefit from that period of being in their mother's womb. The next thing I learned after really immersing myself in the education crisis was the realization that the role of nutrition, and how many children in South Africa are stunted and therefore struggle to learn. So making sure that our children are, by the time they go to grade 1 or to primary to ECD centers, that they're not behind just because they've not been receiving good nutritious food and enough nutritious food. But what I did discover as I was grappling and finding out how do we do this, what is it that all of us can do, is how many people there are in our country with knowledge, skills, experience, who's not sharing it. So when I hear of someone like Jen is saying she's working in townships, and we really do need to share our knowledge, because I think every mother who has raised her own children and have been successful in preparing her children for the world have an enormous responsibility, because many, many, many mothers in South Africa today have not been equipped with the knowledge to prepare her children for success. And I want to give you two parts of that. Sorry, just quickly just how that story then went out. So I started to get interested in what can I do, and after a long search, started a program called Partners for Possibility. And what that was is we partnered school principals of under-resourced schools all across the country with business leaders with knowledge and skills and experience in leadership. And then the two of them would go on a journey together, and we would ultimately expect them to start to lead change in the school, but to do that in partnership. So these business leaders were essentially accompanying the principals to lead change. And so we worked with 1,900 principals across the country. And what we found in working with those principals was just the importance of the partnership between the educators and the parents. And my hope is that you're going to leave this room with a few kind of bits of data that you can use in your conversations tomorrow, not next week, like in the next few days. So the first bit of data I want to share with you is that if you think of children in primary school, which I know your children, most of the children in Sean's school are not there yet, but it's something for us to think about, because we have to think about this before they go to primary school. So our children are typically awake, oh goodness, 5,800 and something hours. So this is if they 365 days a year, and they're awake 16 hours a day because they sleep 8 hours a day. That's the kind of theory. 5,800 and something hours a day. Of that time, they spend at most 20% at school. So they spent 80% of their awake hours not at school. And if I think of my own children, I've got two beautiful daughters. They're 22 and 26, and they're very successful. And they were very lucky because I learned from my mother how to create a nurturing environment for a child. I was able to do it for my daughters. But what I've realized is that that's not, I can't take that for granted. I can't expect that most mothers know that, because most mothers grew up with a lot of trauma and a very difficult situation, and very difficult. I mean, I've been spending recently a lot of time in Khayelitsha and Manenberg and places that don't look like the leafy suburbs. And I'm so conscious of the fact that all of us, all mothers, have big dreams for their children. My children were just so privileged because they had safety and comfort and warmth in winter and cool in summer, which most children and most mothers don't. Most mothers are not able to give that to their children. But here's the point. Our children, on Sunday, we were in Khayelitsha, and I was talking to one of the pastors about this. This is something that I wish more pastors knew. I wish more social workers knew. I wish everybody knew that the 20% is only successful because of the 80%. So my children are not successful because of the 20%. I promise you that. They went to government schools. It was nothing, it was very ordinary government schools. But what happens in those schools was the cherry on the cake of what we had created at home. And the enrichment and the love and the care and the nurturing. And so that's another piece which we've discovered, because our theory that we're now working with has really been developed from working with these 1,900 principals around the country and the school communities, is that what our children need more than anything else is loving adults in their lives. Loving adults, and this is again why I say we need more Montessori teachers, because Montessori teachers know that. They know that the world needs loving adults and adults who are willing to let children play. So I was talking to some ECD practitioners recently, and there was someone in the room who wanted to kind of say, how do we get more of these ECD practitioners trained? And, you know, lots of trying to have a kind of overlay of almost judgment on them that they're not being trained. And my children never went to an ECD center, because our whole environment was a loving, nurturing environment, and they played. And they had lots of opportunity to discover and learn through play. And we know that, you know, when we come back to ECD, children don't need trained teachers to create environments for them to play, but they need teachers who are committed to their development and who will find creative opportunities for them to learn through play. So in one of the schools in Atteridgeville, a principal said to me, she said, you know, Louise, I've realized why the white kids in Pretoria East are so successful and the kids here in Atteridgeville struggle. And I was really interested because I thought maybe this is now a real kind of new insight that I didn't know. She said there's two things that happen. In those leafy suburbs in Pretoria East, the kids have access to puzzles and they play with Lego. And because they play with Lego and they build puzzles, by the time they come to school, they're so much more ready to do what they need to do at school. And I mean, I never thought of that. But when I start to think about the complete absence of those kind of opportunities to play in most of these homes, and then I look at my children who had more puzzles than you could ever imagine, and they had, you know, boxes and boxes and boxes of Lego. So I don't say we need Lego is not the answer, but it's things to play with, opportunities to use those, develop those skills. So 1,000, so they're awake 5,800 hours a year. Of that time, they spend 20% at school, 80% in the community. And so the job of community is to raise our children. And we have to say, how can all the participants, how can all the members of that community contribute? So my conversation with the pastor is, what role can the church play? I don't think we should teach children about Jesus or any, you know, God or anything until we've been able to make sure that they're ready to go into the world and that they feel loved by all the adults around them. And so that takes me to my next part of the story, because, and we'll come back to the 80%, but in trying to figure out how can we move the needle in these under-resourced schools, I spent quite a bit of time looking internationally at what is the latest research around setting children up for success. So we heard earlier from Nubuntu, and if I was Nubuntu and I had 2 young children, I will want to know what is the one thing I can do to give my child the best chance that they can finish matric, and finish matric well, and we'll be able to do something after that. So who on this call know what that is? What is if we could only do one thing, and I've mentioned quite a lot of things, but if we could only do one thing for our children that will give them the best chance to finish matric well, what would that be? Does anybody know?
To be critical thinkers.
Critical thinkers. We'll come back to that, Sinead. Is that Sinead? Sinead. Sinead. Thank you, Sinead.
I would say support.
Support. Anybody else?
For me, it would be giving them the best foundation with regards to their education life, getting them into the best, what you call preschool. That is our main objective as their parents, that if we lay the foundation right, surely the other years would be a breeze, simply because of the foundation that we laid down for them.
And I think this is the point, Nubuntu, is that, you know, so we all have a different story about what is that good foundation. And one of the things I've learned is that we have to be quite specific. We have to, so Naval says, believe in the adult they're meant to become. So these are all true, every single one that everybody of you has said. But Nubuntu, I want to say this to you as one mother to the other. If there's one thing that will give your child the best chance to succeed in matric, and you have to, and we're going to say you're only allowed to do one thing. This is what I want. I want you to take away from this call, and I keep saying I wish we could shout this from the rooftops, because then we will change we will change how we do things. The one thing that your child needs to be able to do in order to finish matric is to be able to read fluently and for meaning and home language and English by the end of grade 3. Once we have that as a target, then we can say, well, what are all the things we can do in the run up to that? But if you, I want to, it's an absolute guarantee. If your child cannot read fluently for meaning in home language and English by the end of grade 3, they will suffer for the rest of their academic career. And they will find it extremely difficult to succeed.
And support, and, you know, just read with them as well.
So this is the thing.
Lots of reading, let them love books.
So Tracy,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and what was so fascinating for me in working with all these principals in their communities is that when I ask the teachers, what can the parents do to support what happens in the classroom? They give me this blank stare, because they've never thought of the parents as a key part of the equation. They think they're going to have to do it all in the classroom. But if parents discover, the moment when parents discover that actually they have an enormous role to play. So going back to Nabantu, because we've heard about her 2 beautiful children. You know, we work with many, and I'm sure that's not the case for you, Nabantu, but we work with many parents whose reading isn't that well themselves, or they can't read. And then I say the most important thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that those children understand that we know the importance of reading. So which means that we will create opportunities for them to read and be read to. And play books from a young age. We need to have, children need to be able to move those pages of the book from a young age. And parents need to know that it is their most important job.
For our school, we have a library. At our school, we have a little library for the parents. So that's something that I've enjoyed at Hatfield, is that we have resources for parents to come and take out books. And so that's also been quite lovely to see. You know, some schools don't have that. So this was quite lovely.
Well, Tracy, and I think the thing is just that, so we're having this conversation about the children at Hatfield. But we're also having the conversation about the children of your domestic worker, or the children of your other people. Most parents don't know how critical this is. So let me pause there and hear whether anybody else has another comment or something that you want to say about what I've said so far.
Well, Louise, I feel like you also just really highlighted the importance of this conversation, because that is a huge inequality in this country, just the basic right to books and reading and being able to go to a library, because absolutely, if you can't read or write, you can't pass your matric. It's so obvious, it's so clear. So yeah, it's just why it's so much more important to have these conversations.
And the thing is, Sinead, it's that, you know, I said, there was a whole, you know, what I've learned that this is, so they have to read fluently and for meaning. And that's something that I think most of us, I didn't realize how important it is to ensure that children tell you the story about what they've just read, that they get the opportunity to write about what they've just read. Writing and reading are 2 parts of the same coin. And that happens at home because the teachers are usually too busy to be able to support that with everybody. So the opportunity, and then people say, but I work from, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, come late to him at night. Then I say, well, then we need to get that community to say, who are the gogos in that community, or the unemployed people who can be the mother for a group of children. And I have a few dreams here. One of my dreams is that in years to come, women who work will be able to have 4.5-day work week, so that one evening a week, one afternoon a week, they are the mother in the community at home, and all the other kids can come to their home. And then they can facilitate the play and the opportunities for them, because we can no longer sit back and expect the educators to do this all for us. We really do need the community involved. Now, what happened to me, which was one of those defining moments of my life, is I was working with a school community, and we were trying to get the teachers and the parents to work as a partnership. And our first evening that we had a conversation with the grade 4 parents. At that time, my daughter was grade 4, and I sat in on the grade 4 parent conversation. And we were trying to get this idea that there's a contract between the parents and the teachers have to say to the parents, you know, I'll tell a quick story. The school where my children were at, there were very clear contracts. We were called in January, and we were told what our job was. As a grade 1 parent, here's what we expect. Grade 2 parent, this is what you expect. Grade R parent, here's what we expect, because we need the child need to read next year, or need to get ready to start to read. So I've been, you know, at that time, this was my second child, and I've been told what to do. And then one day, I got called in by my youngest daughter's teacher. And she said, "It feels to me as if you are treating your daughter like a baby." She was grade 1 or 2, grade 2, or grade 1. She said, "Feels to me," and I said, "Oh, yeah, but she is my baby. And, you know, she's my youngest child." She looked at me squarely in the eye. She said, "If you want a baby, go get another one. Don't treat this one like a baby." And it made such a big difference for me. But it's because there was a contract, there was a relationship between us. And what we need is for teachers, the parents need schooling, hey? Parents really don't know how to be good parents. They need advice. And in that moment, I needed to be told to be less clingy about my beautiful daughter. But the moment that changed my life was when we were in that room, and we had a group of grade 4 parents, and there were about 40 parents in the room. And I said to the teacher, "So what should we do to help?" And she looked at me with, like, she's never had this conversation. She didn't know. And I was kind of trying to prompt her, because I've had all this training. And at one point she said, "Oh, one thing you can do with your children is you can read with them." And there were 40 parents in the room. And for 40 parents, that was a brand new idea. No one had ever said to them how important it was for them to read with the children. And then I asked myself, well, why are we blaming parents? Because they didn't have the benefit that I had to know that from a young age. And so we need to teach them. Sorry, there was something else that was just on my tip of my tongue to say in that moment. Come back to it. So we have to teach parents how to support their children, and we have to help them understand the importance of reading. But if we say that getting our children to read is a communal responsibility, then we have to say, well, who are all the people who might be able to play a role? So I have this dream that we give every person over 60 3 little readers that they carry around with them, and a box of gold stars. And when they see a child, they say to the child, "Oh, in this community, we care so much about reading. Would you be willing to read a few pages for me?" And then when they do that, we give them a gold star, because we want them to know that reading is valued. Now, I worked with a principal who was trying to get the community, the kids and the teachers to read. And at one point, I realized that nothing was happening. And I sat him down. I said, "Ridwan, I just want you to tell me one thing. Do you read?" He says, "No, I don't really read." I said, "Well, then nothing's going to change in the school. If you start to read and you start to enjoy reading, and you can invite the children to join your love for reading, but it starts with you reading." So that's another piece, is what are the examples? What example do we set for the people around us? And it does start with us. So that's another thing I want to share with you, is that Harvard School of Education did some research around what is the best thing that we can do for the children in a school. And there was lots of effort went into this, and they discovered that the best thing that we can do for the children is to ensure that the adults in the school are good role models for the children, and that the adults are kind and compassionate and loving, and that the adults read. So, Lwanta, I'm just going to ask you to unmute yourself, to mute yourself, because there's a lot of background noise if you're able to, and then you can just unmute again later when you want to speak. So the adults in the school, and so it starts with what is the example that we set, and how do we, and what is the environment that we create where children discover, and this is the next thing I want to say, because we work with adults. I do a lot of work with business leaders, and then we find out how hard they are on themselves, how they beat themselves up. Almost there's a viciousness around how critical we are of ourselves. And then when I ask them why, to reflect on what, we put them through, there's an exercise, and they have to do this exercise, and the outcome of the exercise is this kind of realization that they're actually really very, very hard on themselves, and they beat themselves up all the time. And then we talk about where that comes from. And it comes from our schooling system. Because here's the other reality that I think us as parents, we really need to understand, that is, children don't leave school knowing what they're good at. They leave school knowing what they're bad at. And so my question that I want to ask the world is, what if the job of school is for children to discover their gifts? And what if the school is a place that becomes an attractor to the gifts and contribution of the people in the community? So I'm going back to the elders in our community. What we've discovered in these schools is that every school has 10, 15, 20, 30, I don't know how many elders living around that school who really have so much to contribute, and who need the energy that they can only get from coming to the school. So we have made a concerted effort to invite elders to bring their love, their listening ears, their hands that can clap, their hands that can put gold stars on people, on children's. We all always had those gold stars that we had on our foreheads when we did something good. I don't know whether that still happens, but older people are fantastic to clap, to listen, to give an opportunity for a child to sparkle and shine, and then give them a gold star to let them know that they're appreciated. So what we've done in some of our schools is we've invited the elders to come and tell us what they love to do. And then inevitably there's going to be some elders who say, I love to make a garden. And then we'll go, ooh, this garden in the school needs some help. Or I love to listen to children, or I love to help children play, or I love build puzzles and I'd love to go. And then we say, well, bring your gifts and your talents and come and be part of our community, because a group of teachers cannot do this work on their own. And if we make sure that the churches know that the main responsibility for a community is to ensure that our children can read fluently for meaning in home language and English by the end of grade 3, then we will rethink what we do on Sundays if going to church is part of our your kind of cultural tradition. So let me stop there and hear whether anybody else has something else that you want to comment or respond to, because I've said a lot now.
I would also say we should tell parents that even if it's before reading, have meaningful conversations, describe the environment. What do you see a flower? What's the color of the flower? You know, things like that. The sun and that's what I did with my second child. I've got two very big gaps, 15 years. And what I've learned from my first child, being a single mom and totally stressed out, never having enough time for her, to having this little Mickey that I've been talking to since she was small. So I also think encourage parents to just put down their phones, switch off their TV, go for a walk, take the dog with, and talk about what is around them, and get them to start using little words, and not baby language, but you know, the proper words. Things like that is also very important.
Absolutely. And for those of you who know anything about this kind of research, there's been some research around children who succeed have heard, and I can't remember, I'm trying to think, it's something like 32,000 words in a year.
Yeah.
And then children who, and because their parents talk to them all the time, and children who don't succeed, their parents just don't talk to them enough. So the other thing I want to bring in alongside the talking and letting the child hear your voice, say the words, and it has to, you're right, not baby language, proper language. Another thing that and this is something that comes out of all of the sessions I do with adults in corporate environments, is that what our children need more than anything else from us is our listening. So they need to hear us talk, but they also need to see us be interested in them talking. And they need to hear themselves talk in our presence, where they have this kind of container of, we talk about a environment, a container where they can speak into, and we are listening.
And once they start, they don't stop.
No, they don't. And that's
my
part of our
grade.
job.
I was in the bath with my daughter the other day. She's in grade and she was telling me her whole day, and I'm giggling a little bit. It's like, what, Mama? Protect veel weer. I'm like, I'm just listening.
So Tracy, let's hear from, maybe you want to mute yourself as well, just so that we don't have, then we can just hear from a few other people as well.
Sure.
Anybody else who have a thought on this?
Yeah, adding on to what Tracy just said, actually it's not what I did, but what my daughter did. She likes to play the game I Spy, and yeah, whenever we're taking a walk or in the car driving to school or wherever, we play I Spy. And then what she do would be, Mama, I spy with my little eye something red. And then we point to whatever it is, they explain it in detail. So what her little brother has done now, he's taking cue of the way we conversate between myself and her, and he'd be copying her on some my turn, Mama, and he calls out whatever that he's holding in his hand and be like, dinosaur, and you'd be like, no, you don't have a dinosaur, you need to look outside.
So that's the thing. So but
yeah,
it's those moments where they know they are at the center of our attention, and we are listening, and we're creating an opportunity for them to hear and make sense in our loving and caring presence. So what I was going to say just now is, when I work with these business leaders, I say to the dads specifically, but I learned that I need to say it to the mums as well, and to me, and we need to hear it all the time, is that what our children need from us, and it's, in a way, it's easier for us when they're very little, and we need to make sure that we don't lose that, is they need our soft eyes. Because the brain thinks best in an environment where there is a ratio of 3-to-1 appreciation to criticism. And I've realized that one of the things that I used to do in the past, I used to be very demanding, and I had a whole story around, well, that's my job as a mother, and I had, high expectations for that stuff. And my children suffered as a result of that. And I needed to learn to soften my eyes, to look at them with an expectation that there's going to be something for me to appreciate about what they've done. And I need to make sure that that ratio about appreciation to criticism is 3-1. That's hard work, but it's incredibly rewarding if we can keep it going. So I'm kind of conscious of time, Sean, and I want to just make sure that we leave this conversation with everybody feeling that they've got something from it and that it was worth talking. So let me just share one last thought around how best we can improve our education system around the country, because maybe there's going to be another conversation that you have tomorrow. So there's a methodology in my world called positive deviance, that says when we have a situation where some people are really successful and others people aren't, or some, in our case, 20% of the schools in South Africa produce fantastic outcomes and kids can read and they're ready for high school and they go and they get through 20%. 80% of the schools are not successful. Instead of studying the 80%, it's a really good idea to study the 20%. Study what works, so positive deviance. Sean, if you can just, I think Kwahile has some background noise as well. If you can either just mute him or Kwahile, if you can mute yourself, that would be great. So 20%, we said, what if we studied the 20%? And what we studied what we found in those 20% of the schools is that there are 3 things that are always present in the 20%. And those 3 things are mostly absent in the 80%. And I'm sharing it with you today because I don't know who you're going to have a conversation with tomorrow, but we need to make sure that we understand this. So in the 20% of schools that do well, we have school leaders, we have local principals who understand how to lead a school. And they're confident and energized to do that. And if we don't have that, then it's very hard. There's never been a school with good education outcomes without a good leader, ever in the history of certainly education in South Africa. So we need school leaders. That's a tough job. We need to make sure that they are equipped, supported, encouraged, empowered, all those words. But we need leaders in every school who can lead the local school community. And when I say the school community, it's the teachers, it's the parents, it's all the members of the community who need to come together because it takes a village to raise a child. Once we have that, we need in every school, and this is going to be important when the parents on the school are starting to say, where am I going to send my children to in future? You need to make sure that the school has a school management team who work together, who are in a collaborative relationship with each other and with the principal. Often comes from the principal to make that happen. And when you start, you will know when you go and look at schools for your children, you can feel it when you go into school and there's a collaborative relationship between the school management team and the principal. And there's an order in this. So you need to make sure that's the second thing you need to do. The third thing is you need in every school teachers like Tracy and other teachers on this call who come to work with joy and excitement, and they want to be there and they love being a teacher, and every day is a joy. And one of the things about Montessori, back to, is Jen's still with us? Montessori teachers is, I think Jen's, we've lost Jen. Montessori teachers is that they think that every night before they go to bed, they think about all the children in their school, in their class. And they have them on their hearts. They carry them with them every day. So we need teachers who think like that about the children. Teachers who know that their responsibility is to create a loving, caring, compassionate environment where children can discover their gifts. And who are committed to do their best work in every classroom every day. And then the fourth component into making schools work is parents who know that they have 80% of the responsibility. And so, well, 80% of the time, 50% of the responsibility, but we need to make sure that that 80% time is used to set children up for success for the rest of their lives. So with that, I think my time is up, and I'm going to hand over back to you, Sean, in case there was anything that anybody that you wanted to ask or anybody else want to ask? I'm just looking here at what people have been saying. Caitlin said she had to leave. A few other people, there was someone shared the link of my talk, the TEDx talk, and then Jen had to go. Okay, so we have a few, any final thoughts that anybody want to say or respond to?
I just loved it. I wish we'd had every single parent here, because it's what we always are saying. We need you to be involved with your children. Don't just think that you can leave it all to us. We can't do it. We need you. We really need every parent involved with their child. It doesn't have to be coming to school. It just means being involved with their child at home, not picking them up and being on the phone as they pick the child up, that the child is desperate to tell them something and they're so busy on their phone, they can't even look at their child. And I want to say, please, your child needs you as well as us. We can't do it all.
And I think what we've also realized is the specificity around the guidance. So something like, please make sure that your child can cut with a pair of scissors. You know, most parents, many parents don't know how important it is. Please make sure that your children can know the colors of the rainbow and that they know what yellow looks like, and they can, because colors is such an important building block. Please make sure that they can understand, you know, above and below and on the side, and building with something helps with that. So I think we need to, what I've discovered is I can't make any assumptions around what people know already because they've experienced it at home. It's like we need to train the parents, the stuff that we think every parent should already know, and not expect any of that. That's part of what I'm inviting everybody to think about, because that was my biggest mistake, because I thought, but parents should know they should read with their children. Why are they not doing it? And they don't.
I see Jenny has her hand up.
Yes, Jenny, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you very much for this talk. I found it very practical and very relevant and very understandable. Thank you very much. You are obviously very, very in touch with the education scenario in our country and in our Montessori schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just suddenly want to I remember that Nbantu mentioned about ECD. I worked with these ECD practitioners recently, and it broke my heart, because clearly this school is a school that is well resourced, but most ECD centers in South Africa are so under-resourced. And when we talked about why, the moment the government pays 17 Rand per child per day subsidy for a child in an in a kind of subsidized, funded school. Now, if you ask Sean, what can she do with 17 Rand per child per day? Nothing. I mean, you can't. And so one of the things we really have to put pressure on the government is to increase that subsidy, to make it 46 or 50 Rand per child per day. Because at the moment in South Africa, we pay the prison service 400 and something Rand per day for an inmate in prison. And part of the reason why we have so many people in prison is because we didn't invest in the ECD. So, you know, it's the best investment we can make is to make sure that our children have not necessarily, you know, all the bells and whistles and IT and all that stuff, but loving, caring adults who understand the importance of play and being present for these children to discover their own abilities and their gifts. And then being able to make sure that they're being fed, because most ECD practitioners in South Africa are earning less than the minimum wage, which just is so unfair. It's so not how the world is supposed to be. Jenny, I see your hands up again.
Yes. What you say is perfectly correct. In the beginning of last year, our preschool just suddenly received a probably 5 crates of educational toys from the education department. We didn't ask for them. There was no application for them. They simply arrived there. Of the 5 crates, we were probably only able to use maybe 1 and donated the others to a rural school in somewhere close to Hanover in the Cape, who could possibly make use of them, because there is such huge disconnect between the education department as it is now and what is really happening. And I can't speak for rural schools. I can only speak for urban schools, because that's where my school is. There's such a disconnect between what they think ought to be taught and what actually is being taught.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, I think, you know, the point is just that, Jenny, people like you and Sean and people with knowledge, skills, experience in this space, we have a responsibility to share that, because a lot of these people are at sea. They have no idea where to start. And yet they have the responsibility to look after 10, 20, 15 children every day, and they're just lost. So I hope that's kind of a hopeful invitation for all of us to think about, is how can we all contribute to creating environments where our children get the foundation so that they can succeed later. And how do we make sure that every child can read fluently for meaning in home language and English by the end of grade 3? And what happens in these first 6 years of their lives is such an important part of that foundation.
Louise,
you,
I just want
Louise.
to find out, you obviously said the purpose of this conversation for you is just a bit of enlightenment for everyone who's in the room, because we will have conversations in our own avenues where we can light the next person's candle, right? Where do you think, from a structured perspective, right, can an individual start? If we've been motivated by your discussion to say, you know what, we want to do more, right? We can be the involved parents at a Hatfield Montessori. What about the opposite end of that spectrum? Obviously, as a person who doesn't have a background in education or ECD.
Well, I think the point is just that if you were to partner, this is one idea. If Hatfield ECD had to partner with a school in, I don't know, where a township area with you, where you become their partner school and invite them, and you go and visit them, and there becomes, and you create, I mean, this world that we heard about earlier, where all the children live in harmony together, it starts when they see the adults do it. And so how do we create bridges between these different worlds that we live in, and invite people to come and share our resources? I mean, I just think teachers who know how to do this, we need to find ways to share that knowledge with other teachers who have no idea, and invite them to come and spend some time at your school, or maybe you can go and spend some time in their schools. I don't know. I mean, we can have another conversation around the practicalities around it, but I think none of us should take our privilege for granted, and we need to know that because of our privilege, we have so much to teach and share. And in one of the schools, we had a group of mothers who all came from a very privileged environment, and they all wanted to do something. And then we partnered them with another school where none of the children could read. And these mothers became the reading partners to some of these children. And it wasn't long before the children started to read in the other school, because all they needed were just mothers. Then, you know, and their own mothers was never available because they were working very long hours and had to travel ridiculous times to get to school. So I think it's about getting interested in another community that's not so privileged as yours.
Louise, I agree with what you're saying about going into another community, but I think before one can even do that, we've got a lot of work to do within our own school, and Jenny will probably bear me out there. I mean, tonight we have like 3 of our parents here. They are very committed parents, but we have a lot who are not here. And those are the ones who come to fetch their child, talking on their phone nonstop. And we need to work with those. So if our parents that now know these facts could help to spread it to the other parents, and it's not just me all the time saying, please, parents, be involved with your children. I think sometimes they think that I'm going to get some benefit from them being involved with their children. And it's not that I'm wanting parent involvement for the school's sake. I'm wanting parent involvement for the children's sake.
So,
And
Sean, I want to tell you another
don't
story.
seem to understand that. They think I'm just going to want more money from them. And it's not that at all. I just know that children whose parents are involved will do better than the children whose parents are not involved.
Absolutely. So what we did in one of the school, and the school where so we wrote a book, actually, we wrote a book about our project, and in that book on chapter 4, we tell the story about this one school, about the school where I was involved in. But what we did, Sean, is we decided that we didn't want to have a parent-teacher association. That felt very kind of like old school. So we created a thing that we called a community of committed parents, a CCP at KPS. So it was CCP at KPS. KPS is the school, Kanamaya Primary School. A community of committed parents. And then people say, oh, what is that? And then we say, well, come find out. And then we would have a conversation around what would a community of committed parents do? What would their jobs be? Now, in this case, the school was very poor. So we said the first thing that community of committed parents do is they would ensure that the classroom is as beautiful as the classroom they want their children to be in. So we invite them in January. We'll say, look at the classroom. Are you happy? Your child's going to spend the whole year here. Or do you want to do, no, we'd like to paint it. We'd like to, okay, fine. Come, be part of this. This is your community. This is your room. I'm not going to do this for you. What space do you want your children to be in? It was amazing. The parents showed up. The dads came to paint. They're all busy. So beautification of the classroom. We made a responsibility for the community of committed parents. The second thing is that we said the community of committed parents is to ensure, obviously, that they are available. You know, we talk to them about what's their responsibility with regard to their children, the communication between the parents and the teachers, and making sure that they that they do read what's written in the homework book, and that there was a homework book, and that they would engage, and that they would come to the school when they have a question, and that they will, you know, support the children in doing whatever the parents ask them to do. So children. The third thing is we said that the community of committed parents have a responsibility to make sure that the teacher feel loved and appreciated. And they needed to figure out how to do that. So we came up with a once a year teacher appreciation lunch that the parents would arrange. But, you know, we kind of asked them to come up with their own solutions. And then lastly, fundraising was part of it because it was kind of resource raising. So exactly, education is the three-legged pot. It's the learner, the teacher, the parent. But it's about changing the language from, you know, parent-teacher association to making these parents realize that the future of the school and their children is in their hands, and they are invited to be active participants in creating that environment. So at that point, I'm very conscious of time. I think we should end this. And then if you guys want to have another conversation, let's make that happen. And yeah, and so you can share this with whoever wasn't here with us tonight, and maybe you want to have another conversation somewhere in the future.
Thank you, Louise. I think that's wonderful, and a wonderful idea if we can manage to have a further conversation. I think you've given us all a lot of things to think about, and thank you. So let me say thank you to everybody who's come to the meeting, and we hope we'll see you again sometime. And then we only remain to say good night and have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.